On February 19, 1971, two teenage hitchhikers discovered a partially submerged figure floating beneath a highway overpass. The body was dressed in a green shirt, green plaid pants, and a green floral poncho. Also found at the scene, a white and gold watch and a gold necklace. On her ring finger, there was a gold ring with a transparent stone, indicating that she may have been married. A forensic examination of the remains was conducted by Dr. William Scotts, who concluded that the victim had been killed approximately 30 days before the body was discovered. A man's size 36 belt was fastened around her neck, strongly indicating strangulation as the cause of death. Who was the victim? To this day, we still don't know. Her face had been disfigured. It was unrecognizable, mostly due to the harsh environment her body was left in. She was given the name Little Miss Panasoffkee. The murder remains unsolved, despite the forensic reconstruction of the victim's face in 1971 and in 2012. This case has been all over the news for decades, but every lead has gone cold. Part 1. The discovery, examination, and facial reconstructions. On re-examination, we found the victim had been dead for about 3 weeks to 2 months, putting her date of death most likely between late December, though more likely early January to early February. She had either been in her late teens or early 20s, putting her age about 17 to 24, meaning her birth date was between 1946 to 1954. She was decently tall, about 5'2 to 5'11. She weighed about 105 to 120 pounds, a decent weight for someone her age. One noticeable thing on her body was a ring on her ring finger. This means the victim may have been married, and by this logic we can assume that she was probably older than 18 or 19, because it's unusual to think a 17-year-old would marry. The victim's cause of death was strangulation. She had a belt around her neck, which is suspected to be the murder weapon. The belt was a man's size 36, so the killer most likely had that size. The victim was either from Greece or European origin. The body was found in Florida, so it would likely be that the victim had travelled to Florida around the date of her death. The victim had given birth to at least 1 or 2 children during her lifetime. Due to her suspected marriage and the fact that she had children, it could be possible that her case was an exorcicide, in which a husband or wife kills their partner. There are many theories that we're going to dive deep into later on. A collection of forensic facial reconstructions were made in the 1980s to show what she may have looked like during the early and late stages of her life. In 2012, another reconstruction was created, visually different from the first. The reconstruction was combined with a scale model of the victim's clothing. A rare orthopedic surgery procedure known as the Watson-Jones technique had been performed on her right ankle when she was about 16 years old. This operation, which involved stretching the tendon by screws drilled into the bone, would most likely have been performed to rectify a chronic instability, which would likely have seen the victim sprain her ankle several times before the operation. Periostitis was found in her right leg, which was likely noticeably uncomfortable for the victim. Part 2. The potential serial killer connection. In 1993, the Sumter chief of police suggested that the woman could have been a victim of the serial killer Paul John Knowles. Knowles was active in Florida in 1974, but was on parole in 1971. He was known to strangle his female victims with inordinate objects. Could this serial killer be responsible for the woman's case? Let's go into it a bit further. Paul John Knowles, also known as the Casanova Killer, was a serial killer who murdered at least 20 to 35 people through June to November 1974 across 7 US states. He was killed on December 19, 1974 by an officer while in a police car. Reports say Knowles grabbed Lee's handgun, discharging it through the holster, and while Lee was struggling with Knowles and attempting to control the vehicle, another officer fired 3 shots into Knowles' chest, killing him instantly. He was known to strangle his female victims with inordinate objects, which is very similar to how the victim had been strangled with a belt. It's also known that Knowles was on parole in 1971, probably around the same time the murder took place. Now, we don't officially have proof that the victim was killed by Knowles, but we do have some evidence that he could be responsible. Part 3. Carol. In 1988, a woman recognised one of the facial reconstructions, and she believed it was a runaway that she had seen in 1970, and believed that this was Miss Panasoffkee. The woman said the girl, who called herself Carol, was a runaway from an undisclosed state. The girl was known to hang around Clearwater Beach, south of Lake Panasoffkee. The girl had allegedly been pregnant and was forced to give up the child, which eventually caused her to allegedly run away. The woman said she last saw Carol around the fall of 1970, when she left with 3 unknown men from Tampa. It's unknown if the girl was Miss Panasoffkee or not. The person who reported Carol has never been reported to the public, and I can't find anything about their ages, but I can assume that Carol was probably a young woman. This fits in the victim's age, but still there is not enough to confirm this. I was unable to find any missing persons cases or murder cases where the victim's name was Carol. The theory of Carol wasn't very evidence-based, but this theory could be true. As I previously said, this case became very famous and was all over the news, and it was featured on a TV show called Unsolved Mysteries, and in that show it stated, in the fall of 2012, this case was featured on a Greek missing persons show. A viewer called in and identified her as a friend of hers named Konstantina. The caller, Konstantina, and several other girls were part of a program for a school that sent them to either the United States or Australia, with a 2-year contract for work. The caller said that she had lost contact with Konstantina when they were both sent to separate countries, the caller to Australia and Konstantina to the United States in 1970. Another viewer called in claiming that 2 other girls went to the United States with Konstantina and that their whereabouts were also unknown. No new leads have surfaced on Konstantina's whereabouts, suggesting that she may have been Little Miss Panasoffkee. However, a positive identification has not yet been determined, as her relatives have not been located. This theory could be true, however we still don't have enough evidence to support it, and despite decades of searching, we still can't prove anything definitive, and it's unlikely we will ever find out what truly happened. Let me know your thoughts below.